Howdy, everyone. Welcome back to the MatchNet podcast. This is your best friend, Benji, and your bestest buddy, Yun-A Johnson. How you doing, Yun-A?
Good, doing good.
Good. So today we're talking about something that we did not expect to be talking about on the podcast that is just for single folks who are preparing for the matching and blessing, which is what?
Parenting.
Parenting. Why are we talking about parenting? Because we have all the answers and we know how to raise amazing kids and we know exactly what you guys should do to raise great, fantastic children. Right, Yun-A?
I think that's like,
We have all
yeah, the opposite, but that's why we're talking about it. I think
the opposite
parenting,
of
right?
what I just said. Yeah. Well, this was a topic that came as a request from one of you guys, actually a couple who's in the matching process and they're going to the blessing soon. And they wanted to have a topic about parenting. So Yun-A and I, just as Yun-A just said, is the opposite of what I just said, which is we don't have all the answers. But I will say that I think personally, Yun-A and I have had a lot of ups and downs with our parenting experience in our journey, and also being children, right? Being raised in our movement. We have a lot of insights that we've gained. We've made a lot of investment time and money into learning how to parent. I think we've come to conclusions that are worth sharing. So that's what we're going to be sharing. This is not the end all be all for parenting advice and how to prepare well for parenting, but it's going to be kind of maybe a part of a series. And if you guys like this content about parenting and preparing to be a parent, then we will definitely make more of them. So think of this as like Yun-A and Benji's basic overview tips about how to enter parenting with a wonderful mindset and actually enjoy the process. And so that we can pass on the wisdom that has taken us many years to learn. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's nice coming from us, and the series too, we can have others come in and give some insights. But yeah, because we sort of know a lot what you're feeling and experiencing as singles and preparing and those kind of questions, I think, yeah, it's nice we can talk about parenting too with where you are now when it's the future for you, many of you who are listening, right?
Where do you feel like people are right now in terms of like, okay, they're about to get blessed, or maybe they're thinking about parenting? I remember when I was a teenager, like 14, 15, I was like reading Hanukkah and like making note about things that were said about parenting, right? And I remember from a very young age making mental note, like when I'm a dad, I'm going to do this. I'm going to raise my kids like this. So where do you feel like people are right now in terms of this topic?
I feel like it's interesting because, yeah, parenting, it's funny, even from a young age, you think about that, like as a little child, and for maybe sisters, girls, a lot, we were playing, house and dress up and those things. But
hey,
I feel like, yeah, it's a big natural part of the matching process because unlike dating, right, a lot of this culture, it's very long-term thinking. So parenting comes up a lot in the considerations around who's going to be your future spouse, values, things to talk about this. And I think it's actually such a great topic. To see, of course, you don't know, and it's hypothetical. And that's one of the things I'm going to share from Alexander and I's experience, I think, of like even getting on the same page of what you want to learn about with parenting, right? I'm very much thinking ahead in the future. And Alexander was more like, well, it should make more sense when we're actually parents, right? And learning, because a lot of stuff, it just concept goes out the window, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just want to acknowledge that, like, I think people have different perspectives on this. Some may feel it's really important to talk about now, the planners or futures, and others might feel like, yeah, it's all concept until it's real. And both are, they're not wrong, right? Like there's value to both. But yeah, that's why I think it's a great topic.
Yeah, that's a great point. 100%. Yeah, that's interesting. I think this couple, I'll maybe speculate here, but I think this particular couple that is requesting this topic, but also a lot of the people that are curious about parenting and have requested this type of topic, I believe that one of the reasons that this is real for people, even though they're not parents yet, and they probably won't be for a number of years, is because thinking about raising kids produces a lot of anxiety. And it definitely did for me. And this is why I was very anxious in preparing to parenthood, even before I was blessed, because I was essentially really afraid of screwing up my kids, to be honest. Seeing how kids are raised in this world and being observant of that, and seeing how my parents raised me, like God bless them, right? And seeing the mistakes and the things they did well and wanting to replicate those. And like, And I'm the kind of guy that you mentioned, where it's just like, I want to prepare well. I want to make sure I've got my life in order. I want to make sure that I pass on as much of the goodness as I can, and as little as possible pass on the things that I don't like about myself, right? So I think that's where a lot of people are, is like, just there's a lot of uncertainty, maybe is a better word, or anxiety, or like, are we going to mess up everything? Like, how do we do this thing? So I think what we're going to offer in this episode here is just perspectives that have helped us and served us. And my goal is, I would like to give people the mental liberation to feel like it's okay that you're going to make mistakes when you're a parent.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that took me many years to crack and understand it. And I would say that's my first and foremost biggest tip that I can give, like straight out the gate, is you will suck at parenting to some degree. You will. Right. Yeah. And you will make mistakes. And like, that's like, I can't tell you how unreasonable it is to think that you won't. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how we learn. If we didn't, like, that is how we learn how to do stuff. And I think what people get stuck is when they do make mistakes and they don't learn from their experience, or they don't recognize that their actions are affecting their child or their spouse. But if you are somebody who's self-aware enough to realize, like, oh, I could have done this better. I should be more like this, or I can grow in this capacity. Then it's like, if you have a growth mindset, at the end of the day, you'll be fine. You know, and your kids, most importantly, like, your kids will see that in you and they will replicate it. And I can't tell you how, like, my goal with my kids is, no matter what I say or do in my life, I want them to have a growth mindset, which means at the end of the day, no matter what, they will say, okay, how can I grow from this? And if I can instill that in them, then they will succeed in everything in life, because they will never say, oh, like, oh, my dad is, was the worst, or my parents, or blame other people, or like my circumstances. It's like, no, how can I grow from this experience? And if I can instill that in them, then that's the best thing that I think I can give them. Right. So even with faith, relationship with God, if my kids are not like 100% satisfied with their understanding of God or spirit world, instead of them being like, it doesn't exist and just write it off, it's like, okay, be curious enough to know that it's worth growing your faith so that you can have conviction in these things. And so I'm saying this because if you individually have a growth mindset, meaning that you will learn from every experience and try to grow from it, then your children will do that too, because they will learn from your model, from them replicating it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk on this too, because I think there are so many things coming up. One, first of all, you're newborn parents. Like, sometimes you have a newborn baby. When that's your first baby, you are also newborn parents. Now, I'm an 8-year-old parent. My oldest son is 8, right? I also have a 1-year-old. I have younger children, but I do see that difference. And it's like, especially that growth, like the awareness that I have now over many years of learned awareness, of so much more chill with this newborn baby, like my 1-year-old now, compared to when I was a 1-year-old parent with my first 1-year-old, right? When my oldest was 1. And I think that kind of growth and just being gentle with yourself is so important in perspective. And just like you said, Benji, like, it's like, I remember when I would, oh, why did I react that way, or certain things, and just spend so much time getting upset at myself for that, like beating yourself up, like you were saying. But the key thing is, what flipped for me was when I was like, wow, the fact that I'm aware of how I could have done that better, and I replay that in my head, and then I just like, okay, next time I'll do it better. That it's such a big shift to go, and that's kind of that, for me, that was that changing point. I don't even know exactly when it was, but not being so hard on yourself, and just like, wow, I'm aware of what I could have done better. Make a mental note and then do better, right? And I think that does take some time of growing. Right. But I want to say to those two, like, I was actually not so insecure about becoming a parent. I was much more on the marriage side, which I've shared before, and like having a good marriage, which I know impacts your kids so much too, right? The example you set in your relationship as husband and wife. So I think I spent a lot of time on that. And so it kind of hit me like a bus to struggle as a parent, because I was like, I'm going to be a great mom. Like, so there might be people like that too, that are like, that's less of your insecurity. And a lot of mine was around the relationship, because that's connected with my experience as a child. And actually, I had my parents were really great parents. I give them a hard time as like not setting the example, because that stood out so much to me in childhood, their relationship, which I have to say it's a huge part, right, of security for children and everything. But in terms of like curiosity, growth mindset, those kind of things, that was such a huge value in our family. And I'm so grateful for that, because I felt like that has helped me. I've been able to follow that example from them really well. And I appreciate them so much more as a parent now compared to when I was a child and judging them for their marriage, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just something so like humbling and full circle. And I just really, yeah, that's great, you know, and they're great grandparents, right? It's great to
I
have.
think that's incredibly mature to have a perspective like that. And I've noticed that it tends to be when we get older, and especially when we start spending less time with our parents, and even, you know, as they're passing on, right? At the very end of their life, people are more likely to say, I'm not upset or resentful to you anymore, but more, I'm glad for the time that I was able to spend with you. And they're able to be grateful, even though their parents are not perfect, right? And so today I was having a conversation with a guy that I'm mentoring, and it's like some people are like, you can have two people in the same family, and one person is very resentful to their parents, and one person is just grateful to them, right? So it's an interesting perspective to have. And this came to light I was at a workshop. If you guys are familiar with a landmark forum, I went to one landmark workshop, right? And then 2 times, someone, you know, sometimes like people come on stage and they share things openly, and it's usually very vulnerable and emotional. God bless them. Twice in this workshop, 2 people, separate people, came up on stage and said they were upset at their parents for never getting them braces for their teeth.
Whoa. Oh,
I was like, okay, which is, I get why people feel resentment to their parents, but it really highlighted for me is like, who says that that's what being a loving parent is? You know what I'm saying? Like, but by whose definition is my parents got me braces, therefore they love me? And then another guy got on stage and said he was resentful to his dad for never teaching him how to ride a bike. Like, do you know how many people in the world don't spend any time with their dads? You know what I'm saying? It's like I've talked with guys who are, you know, living in very, very poor third world countries, and they're grateful just to spend 5 minutes a day with their dad in the morning, and they're happy. And there's people in America in first world countries where like, my father didn't teach me to ride a bike. I'm like, who told you that that's what love is? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm going a little bit on a tangent here, but this is like, it's perspective. It's all perspective, you know?
But I think that that's the thing. It's your child. You know what I mean? Like, it's your inner child. Like, who told you? It's the love that you needed as a child. And it's hard because I think this is why being a parent is so hard. It's like an extra extension. Your children are different than you, and like how to love them the way that they need to be loved, it's almost impossible. Like if you try to observe and learn and be curious and teach them, you can kind of like, wow, I see that's really important to you. Like find the stuff that's important for your kids. But that's what I think is going on there. It's more like the inner child. Like maybe the dad was giving love in ways that he thought he was everybody's trying to do their best. Like we know that a lot as adults, but I feel like you're giving those examples. When I think of that, I think of that person, even though they were an adult, it's their 6-year-old self or their 5-year-old self saying like, asking dad you to teach me how to ride a bike, and like he was away, or he was like, no, it's not so important, I'll teach you to drive or something, you know. And it's like, but to the child it was important. And I think it's more that like, do we really see our kids? And this is the good, like the simple parenting advice that I would say. It's like, it's not about actually even being the most patient or like you know, you want to be a good example, but you kind of are who you are. Like I remember my mom, she's not the patient person, but like we understood that from a young age, and she would apologize, you know, when she would get upset. And I remember being as a kid like really understanding of that, like that makes sense, we apologize, she apologized. It's like a great thing you can do. And I felt like, yeah, there's a lot of things that we put on ourselves, especially when we think about being parents. Like my character isn't you can do this in the matching process too, like your strengths and weakness of your parents. But I think the best thing you can give to your kids is like to really see them for who they are, and they might be wildly different than you, and to value that. Like for me, like my sons, I sometimes struggle with what they're interested in that's so different from me, right? But I want to like care and to know, just to show them that, right? That love, even though, yeah, even though I'm maybe my character wouldn't naturally want to do that. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I feel is the heart of it. Like it's like you said, it's not, and like the 5 minutes a day, at least they have 5 minutes of connecting, because like it's really about connection versus like there might be somebody that sees their dad more often that day, but the dad, they don't have those moments of connection, and the person who sees their dad. So, but I think that at the end of the day, it's how we feel as a child, and it's hard to pill to swallow that there are going to be things that you don't meet your child's need all the time. I think that's literally the hardest thing as a parent. Like you're aware of your limitations of love almost every day.
Yeah. Well, right? If you think about it, like, I mean, like the example of like riding a bike, that's a very Western thing that dads teach their kid, or like playing baseball, right? I've heard people feel, you know, some level of resentment because they never played baseball or catch. And that's a very Western thing. But if it's like, if your dad's Japanese, I mean, they're not going to teach you how to ride a bike, culturally speaking, right? Yeah, so there's going to be this gap between their expectation, like you said, like the way that they want to receive love and the actuality. So I think it is helpful as we're preparing for parenting, and also going into parenting, realizing that, like back to my first point, we're going to make mistakes. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're not going to, like it's very, very reasonable to say that we're going to make mistakes. And I think the question is like, are we learning from those mistakes, and are we improving? And are we having the self-awareness to know that, oh, like my son really wants to play catch with me, you know, or my daughter really wants me to, you know, play dolls with her, whatever it is, or tea time, and being able to recognize that, because there are a lot of people that will blow up at their kids and then just not even like just brush it off.
Try to repair it. Yeah.
Or just like, that's how I am. I'm just an angry person. It's the kid's fault. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Big difference.
I think that's huge. That's the huge difference. Like that's what you can focus on is, I'm learning all the time. That's what that's my line. Yeah. Mommy's learning too. Like we're all growing together. I wanted to share like just a super practical for the people who like Googling stuff or want to, as you know, matching conversation. You can check out this circle of security. They don't have, and you can even look at the image of the actual circle, but I'll mention it because this was when we were having a really hard time when, you know, I had 2 under 2 when my first 2 sons were born, and it was really challenging. And we went to this course that was offered by our like pediatrician's office and called Circle of Security. And I still use that parenting. It took me such a long time to get it, but now that I get it, I use it a lot. And it's basically this idea of like kids go in a circle. And this is where you can be aware of what kids need, but also your own challenges as a parent. Like there tend to be 2 areas where we might be more challenged. And the idea is like children need to go out and discover. So they go away from you, and then they need to come back and be received with like open arms. And so for some parents, they really are cautious or afraid or scared or worried. Sometimes maybe moms can do this where they don't want their kids to go out too far. They're worried they'll get hurt. That kind of, it comes up. And then there's also the other side, but you need to let your kids go out and explore. That's the point, right? They need to discover the world on their own. And then there's the other side where it's like when they come back or when they want to do something with you, like learning to ride a bike example, everything, that you're there to connect with them when they ask, which sometimes can be the most inconvenient time, like in the middle of a Zoom call, right? Like the kids, there's no, that concept, their circle. And so just to give like example, like our littlest son, Ruben, we go to this young adult service at Clifton Yum, and he wants to be out and crawling on the floor. And like naturally by the stereos and speakers, there's all these cords. My mind is like, oh gosh, like he's just going to go right there. But because I know about this circle, he actually doesn't go very far, like his circle. Like he goes about a meter out exploring, and then he comes right back to my lap. And like, because I know that, I let him do it. The first time I tried to pick him up, he screamed, right? Because I disrupted his discovery trying to go out. So instead I was like, no, he's just going to do a really small circle because he's a small baby. And I just let him crawl, and he came right back. He didn't even go to the corner. And I was like, that's way better than having a screaming baby, like, because I wouldn't let him go out and discover, you know? So I don't, that's an example. With older kids, it's much bigger. It's like their circle might be a whole day that they go out to school. They don't see you all day. And then when they come home is when they see you. And that's when they want to connect, right? And are you ready to talk with them about school or read the book they're interested in or whatever that is, you know? But it's kind of exploring moments and connecting moments. And what do you feel as a parent when your child is doing those things? Because those tend to bring up some type of anxiety often for parents, because again, kids are on a different time schedule than we are, right? And their circles and stuff. But yeah,
that's awesome.
There's a whole psychology and things around it, but that has really helped me so much to like not stress as much as a parent, and also look at the stuff like how I'm responding and reacting, you know, what's in my control, and how can I let my kids develop more the way they need to. And it's very different, right? Each child is very different in what they're interested in exploring and the ways they want to connect.
Can I share an experience with that I had yesterday?
Yeah.
So Kojin, my oldest son, he's also 8. He's going to a Christian school, as you know, Yun-A. And I texted her this story. I thought she'd appreciate it. So in their school, they teach about the Bible, and they say very frequently how Jesus came to die on the cross for our sins, right? And so he came home last week, and he was like, you know, they keep saying this, and I don't agree with it, right? And it's not like I'm propagating these ideas into his mind, but he's like, Jesus didn't die on the cross because that would mean that God forced someone to kill him, right? That's what he said. And God does not force people to kill people because people have free will. And I was like, there you go.
Wow. Yeah.
You understand the God's principle of creation more than most people. And so he decided to present to his class in comic book format.
So cute.
Why Adam and Eve were supposed to become true parents, why Jesus was not supposed to die, why he was supposed to get married and become true parents, and why we have true parents now. So yesterday, he brought his comic book to school and presented to everybody, including his teacher, to a Christian school where they teach every day that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. And he's like, I'm going to bring this to school. And I was so close. I was so close to saying, you know, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I was like, I didn't say anything.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I was like, I want to know how this turns out. And oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like those experiences, what you're saying, it's like, I feel uncomfortable because I would be uncomfortable presenting to a bunch of Christians. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
But he doesn't care. Like he doesn't have the concept of like, oh, people believe things different from me, therefore it's weird. He's just like, this is what I think, you know?
Yeah.
And then the teacher, God bless her, she was like, we loved his presentation about Adam and Eve. I think because that was the only part she could agree with.
Yeah. And everything else. But that's amazing. I feel like I would love his comic book. I think our kids would be great to read it, you know, Sunday school. But yeah, that's a perfect example, because it's like with little kids, it's, you know, it's small, easy circle. But as our children get older and their different personalities develop, and like, let them explore, let them learn. And, you know, I think he doesn't care. Even if something happened where he was like, oh, he came back crying or in tears, right? You're there for him. Like, that's the whole point. It's like, that's where the circle of security, that's all you can do as a parent, is be that safe space for them. Like, let them, the safe space that they can leave from and they can come back to. And I'm like, it's so simple. And the other thing that parenting course taught me, which I tell parents all the time, is like, if you can be that safe space just 30% of the time, your kids will feel like they had the most amazing childhood ever. And I was like, what? God knows. God designed it that way. You know, like God knows how hard it is. All the things we said that we're going to mess up as parents and all, but your children are so like what they remember and things, again, it's so
Amazing.
yeah, right. Like if you can just do that. And that's comes from us as parents trying to practice and everything. But that was such a like huge moment for me that helped me to like, okay, just try, you know, keep learning instead of trying to be this perfect parent or whatever, you know, whatever you think of yourself, these expectations, just be there for your kids and really look at your kids. And
yeah, that's great.
That's how I think God 30%. Sees us too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that mean that it's okay that I'm smacking them 70% of the time?
No.
I'm like beating them 70% of the time and loving them 30% of the time. That's what matters. No, I'm kidding.
I think what really matters is what you said. Hold back from your own, like putting your own whatever. I don't think you should do that. Like hold back from that and just let them be who they are and really enjoy who they are.
Right. I'm kidding, guys. Don't worry. Benji's not a violent man. Only 70% of the time. So we're good.
You can read all the research about that.
Yeah. No, I don't hit my kids unless I want to. I'm just kidding. Unless I'm angry. No, I'm kidding. So I think overarching concept here we're getting to this first point is you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay if you're continuing to learn and you're growing through. I think one thing that Yun and I have done a lot of is studying and learning, either through courses, books, talking with people, right? We do a lot of that, like asking for advice. And also true parents' words, right? Which is what I want to get into really quick. There's a quote that I heard True Fathers say many years ago, and I actually found it right before this recording. Ready for this?
Perfect.
Okay. We'll put it in the description as well. Who are your children's best friends? Not young guys from the neighboring village. Their best friends are none other than their parents. That is as it should be. Moreover, parents should be liked by their children even more than their friends. That is how you should think. Therefore, parents must be their children's best friends and best teachers. So I heard that, I think I was 14 or 15, and I ingrained it into my mind until after I had kids. The 4 words: best friend, best teacher.
Yeah.
Because that's the horizontal and vertical, right? That's the who do you go to when you want to celebrate? Who do you go to when you have struggles? Who do you go to for security? Right? Which is a foundation for love. It's like, and I can teach on that foundation. I've always believed that if my relationship with my kids is such that they are comfortable with me, they want to be with me and my wife, then I can teach on that foundation. And then someone asked me the other day, like, or yesterday, how, because I was sharing this story about my son, wanting to talk about true parents, right, at school. And she was asking me, like, how did we teach him like that? And I was like, I don't think I did teach him that. Yeah. Because he naturally asks questions. And the way that I have educate is because I don't say like, this is the answer. I say, this is what I believe because of my evidence in my life. What do you think? Like, that's how I teach.
Yeah. Because
no kid wants to be lectured to. Like, we know that, right? We know that.
Yeah.
So I learned that's like the best way to teach a kid is through selling. You kind of have to be a salesman to kids. Be like, well, this is what I think. What do you think? This is what I think about God. What do you think?
What do you think? Yeah.
You got to figure it out yourself. I'm not going to tell you. Even the blessing, I'm like, I'm not going to tell you to get blessed. I want you to figure out what the blessing is, and I want you to decide.
Yeah.
And also, this is the same approach I have with Santa Claus, because they asked me very early on, like, is Santa Claus real? And I said, I don't think so. I've never seen Santa, but you can figure it out for yourself, right? So that's kind of what they're left with.
What do you think? Yeah. I also use the what do you think in the 3s when everything is asked why. There's a phase where they ask why for everything. I'm like, that's a good question. What do you think? It was great though. It was a great way. Oh man, I wanted to just share one quote from True Parents too that I always loved, and I thought of it a different way now, but it's a simple line. It's like, children are God with very small hearts. And I was like, oh, like it makes you think about like just being tender, gentle with their hearts, but also that they're God. And like this whole point of like, you've got to discover who your child is, just like you're discovering God, who God is, and building a relationship with God. Like if you think about what that takes, right? And then if you think about your child in the same way, because I think sometimes you feel like, oh, they're like me, or oh, I don't know. We can make a lot of assumptions. I had so many. When I'm a mom, I'm going to do this and that. And then like you get challenged exactly on that. And I think it's the same. We do that with God so much, right? Like kind of assumptions or what we think. But if you really have been on this journey of discovering a relationship with God and working on that and thinking about that with your own kids, like be open to learn, be open to the different signs or ways they're trying to express their love to you or trying to receive love from you. Yeah, that it's really just beautiful. And that's what's really fun, I think, about parenting. I think it's such an honor to watch and be a part of this journey as I watch my sons grow and who they will be in the future. And I just feel like that's one of my favorite things about motherhood. I'm just enjoying this show and, you know, learning as much from them, like just like you shared, like, what do you think? There's just so many, I mean, kids are so sharp and so no concepts and open to so many things. So I feel like to be constantly learning from our kids is such a, both it's great for them to encourage the way that they think, and it's great for us to be like, be modeling that, right? A lifetime learner.
Yeah.
So,
you know, Yun-A, I know the quote you're referencing, and I have it right here.
Good.
So
okay, we need to put it.
This is from.
Is it small hearts or very tiny hearts or something? You found the quote.
As a peace-loving global citizen, my wife. So this is the chapter where he's talking about true mother. It's called
I thought it was from True Mother.
An incomparable inner beauty. My wife and I made a promise to each other after we were married. We agreed that no matter how upset or angry one of us might be, we would not allow anyone to think, it looks like Reverend and Mrs. Moon had a fight. We agreed that no matter how many children we might have, we would not let them see any sign that we might have had a fight. Children are God. Children are God with very small hearts. So when a child says, Mom, and calls you, you must always answer, what is it? With a smile. So that's the first paragraph of that.
Yes, chapter. There it is. I didn't know it was from Peace Loving Global Citizen.
Awesome. You might have said it in a few places, but when you said it, that's I immediately knew.
Yeah. No, I'm glad. No, I think it is totally from there. Just had that one line. I read it just like you pulled up the one you had that always comes to my mind. Yeah. And I think it's just helpful as a parent, this whole discovery, learning from your kids. God is totally with you. That was one of the best advice I got from a Norwegian mom. I don't even know if she was religious or spiritual, but she was just like, trust your mother's intuition and that God's speaking to you there. And I was like, boom, that's all I needed. Ooh, like, that was so comforting. It's like, whoa. So I think trust yourselves, guys.
I want to make a whole episode about intrinsic motivators, because I've noticed in myself, like the last few months, I was seeking motivation. And I noticed I started increasing like the need for like a podcast or a book or something to be motivated. And I was like, man, this is an addiction, right? It's actually an addiction to need to require some kind of extrinsic motivator to help us to move.
Right.
And it's incredibly common, but we don't talk about it, right? Because an intrinsic motivator is like, you don't need anything, but you just do it because that's what we need to do. But we're trying to seek the motivation so that we can do it. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a good example. Is like, trust your intuition is a perfect example of like, you already have it. Like, you don't need anything.
You don't need the books and all this stuff. It's nice if you want it, right? But like, yeah, that's a good example.
I was touched by something. This is totally tangential to this, but Elon Musk was asked in an interview, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are starting a new business to stay motivated? And he said, without a beat, he said, if you need motivation, then entrepreneurship is not for you.
I love that.
Like, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's the same with parenting. It's like, you don't do parenting when you're motivated. You do it because it's what you have to do.
Yeah. It's like a full ownership. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. it's
so
boring
true.
sometimes, and it's not always awesome and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the total responsibility is on you, you know, like I think that and I like going back to the intro and start of this podcast and those asking this question, like it feels really scary to have that much responsibility, I think. But like when you think about responsibility, think about a vision. And that's the same thing with entrepreneurship too. I feel like the intrinsic motivators, all that thing, it comes down to vision and like how serious and how real and how much give and take and concrete is your vision with God too, because I feel like that's the key. But especially in building your family, your blessed marriage, your parenting, being parents, like you've got a vision. It matters. Maybe it is teaching your kid to ride a bike and playing baseball, or maybe it's, you know, like, you know what it is and you know what it's not, but like really have give and take with that. And I think that that's honestly one of the best ways to feel good about your inner, like who you are and what you bring. I think we have so much give and take with our weaknesses or what we're not, right? But I think the more you like, why do you want this? What's important to you in the vision? Even all the insecurities around, maybe I didn't have the best parenting example. I know all those insecurities are there, right? But like, you need to have more give and take and look for the ways to have but I can still do it, right? You know? And True Parents' words, I love them. I really love Hyundai. It helped me so much as a parent. Just like true love, what is it? And then trying to actively practice it, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's so powerful to have give and take with that daily and then try to put it into practice. Like I felt like just we're so lucky to live at this time and to have True Parents' words while we're trying to build our family. I mean, yeah, that's like my biggest gratitude. I come back, but it's because I have a vision in mind, you know, that I'm trying to apply it to.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Speaking of unconditional love, this is maybe another topic we can cover, and I want to go deeper into next time, but let's touch it now. Something that's been very liberating and helpful for me, and I hope this is kind of puts a little bit of peace of mind into the hearts of people that are preparing for parenting, because there's so many tactics when it comes to parenting. There's so many books that say you should do this, you should sleep this way, you should co-sleep, you should not co-sleep, you should only drink soy milk, you should only drink whole milk. It's like World War III. There's like so many opinions about how you should raise your kid, right? And all the tactics, and you shouldn't say this word, and you shouldn't do this. It's like it's never ending. And of course, depending on which culture you ask, it's very different if you ask someone Norway versus America versus Africa versus Japan versus Korea. Like it's everything. So I will just say what has helped me tremendously is knowing the fact that parenting tactics don't mean anything if your kid does not feel unconditionally loved.
Yes.
Because that trumps everything. If another way to say this is, if your child is unconditionally loved and you love them because you feel unconditionally loved, and therefore you're able to pass that love on to them, then it doesn't actually matter how you raise your kids. And I know that's controversial to hear, but I want you guys to think about that. If a child is unconditionally loved, it doesn't matter which school they go to. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it
doesn't matter how much money you make as a parent. It doesn't matter which instrument they learn. It doesn't matter what your house is, what they look like, what clothes their kids are wearing. It doesn't really matter how you sleep at night, right? Because if it's the overarching idea that I love my kids unconditionally, and I constantly try to do it more, because as parents, that's our mission. That's the journey we're on, is how do I express, like, inherit and be bequeathed the unconditional love of God and pass it on to my children as a husband and wife, representing the male and female, right? That's our mission. That's our job. But that's the journey. That's the dance we're playing, because we're not born like that. You know,
exactly.
That's why we need a partner. That's why we need a spouse. And so that's why we've got to learn. We've got to adjust. And that's why we've always got to keep our cups filled so that we can pass it on to our children.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking, like, if someone's wondering, well, what does unconditionally loved mean? What I always think of, and I mention it a bit, but it's like, do your children feel seen, like really seen who they are? Do they feel heard, that you're listening to them? Do they feel safe? And that safety, that's what we were talking about, this circle of security, that they're safe to bring the good things and the bad things or whatever to you, right? But that's love. Like that's what you feel, unconditionally loved. If you can be seen, heard, and safe around person, that's how you feel. They're on the receiving end of it. And on the giving end, yeah, I think that's the whole part. Like you're saying, us learning and parents, how do we do that? Like, I think a lot of it has to do more with self-awareness. Like, oh, I listen to my kids all the time. I see my kids all the time. You know, you like go deeper, that kind of thing. Do your kids feel it, right? Or do, you know, I think a lot of the humility and growth mindset and all the things we've been talking about is that process for how we can be those like unconditional, loving people and filling up our cup with God's love. And I pray a lot. Like I have to say that it seems so, what's that expression? Like, oh, Lord, help me. I would hear so many moms, like grandmas say that. But like, it's so true. Like there was some times where I was just like, I literally don't know what to do, God. And then God was like, a sticker book. And I'm like, a sticker book? You know, like something. So really, guys, like God wants to help you. And, you know, and God can be unconditionally loved, you know, like that's where we're filling up a lot of our cups, you know, so, and connecting your kids to God too, in their own ways, with questions. One friend, she always says that every question eventually leads to God. And I was like, dang, that's so deep. Like, that's why Coach Ed could have that amazing comic book. I mean, he's thinking very deep. He's asking lots of questions, and those questions come to his own really deep conclusion, you know?
Yeah.
That's so awesome, right? I hope that people listening can feel really reassured. Like, I don't have to sit my kid down for all these DP lectures, like, right? It's like, I can just talk with them and listen to their questions, and, you know, that's amazing. Right. God's guiding them too, you know?
You know, you were talking about why kids always ask why. And so I have entertained that whole process. I've played it out so many times with them. And just like you say, the answer is always because God.
Yeah, because God at the end, like it's always God.
Like it's always so why? Funny. Well, because God. It's so funny. That way. It was interesting. You know, the movie Toy Story 4. I think some people might appreciate this. Forky's one of the main characters. So Bonnie makes Forky, and I was asking the kids like, who made Forky? And they're like, Bonnie made Forky. It's like, who made Bonnie? Right? Parents. But then we're talking about like Woody actually made Bonnie Forky, because Woody took the garbage, the pieces out of the garbage can and gave them to Bonnie to put it in front of her. So actually Woody helped make Bonnie. It's like, who made Woody? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, well, Woody's plastic. So he kept going down this train, and then it was like, oh, it was God made everything. And for our kids, it was like a big realization. It's like literally everything can be traced back to that, right?
To God.
So, you know, again, it's like, I'm not like trying to tell like this is the end. I'm just like, what do you guys think? Like, what do you think? You know, because I genuinely don't want my kids to blindly listen to me or to blindly want to receive the blessing for my sake. You know what I'm saying? I will actively discourage them from receiving the blessing unless they really wanted to. That's just my personal thing, because I know long-term, it's not going to serve them. It's not going to serve their children. You know, and that might be different from what people think, but that's kind of how I've decided to raise my kids. So I think this is really, really, really a touching topic. If you guys want to hear more about parenting and things, then we're happy to go down this rabbit hole a little more. Just let us know. You have to reach out to us and tell us that you really like the parenting podcast, and we could talk about this all day, right, Yun-A?
Yeah.
Like,
it's our life. Like,
oh my gosh, it literally is. Right.
I think it would be fun to have one on the questions kids ask or the things we've learned, because they'll be, I mean, it's fascinating. Yeah, I'm glad you could tell Kojin's story, the comic book.
Yeah, this is only our perspectives too. There's like Christian, who has adult children, right? There's Uncle John, who's raised a bunch of adult children. Abel
has many grandkids,
right? And there's Catherine. Also, shout out to Catherine. You know, England. She's got her own kids. She's raising. So it's like, we could go deep into this. We want to make it relevant though to the matching process and preparing for the blessing. So you can let us know if it is. All right. Any last comments?
I I think just this one, again, with the relevancy to the matching and blessing, that there's lots of fears that you have as a single person. I was just chatting with a mom about this, how she was remembering when she was pregnant and the conversations we'd have, and how like so many of those fears have disappeared now that she has her 2 sons. And I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of things when you're single, especially, and you're thinking about the future, which is so unknown, that a lot of, once you live it, like you're blessed, you have kids, so many of those fears, 10,000s of them dissipate or go away. Like I had a real fear that I wouldn't know if I was able to have kids, like biologically. Then when my first son was born, every fear attached to that, like how would I be grateful? Would we adopt? Blah, 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 blah. It all disappeared.
Wow.
So I just feel like a lot of you in your journey are carrying these heavy fears that you just don't know. They're valid. You feel them, but many will change as you go through life. And and I think that's a huge part of like being able to receive God's love.
Yeah.
Is letting go of those fears a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's also natural to feel fears, I think.
Yeah.
It's biological.
Especially when it's unknown.
You know, like we're wired to identify threats easier than we are to identify non-threats. So you're more likely to assume like, oh, I can't have kids, than to assume like, oh, I'm healthy. Like it's going to be no problem. It's like you're walking in the woods and you see a stick. You're more likely to assume it's a snake instead of vice versa, right? Because if you assume that a snake is a stick, then you're going to get bit.
Problem.
You might die. You know what I'm saying? So like biologically, we're better at identifying threats. So it's understandable. But I think the issue is when it is excessive and it affects us emotionally. You know?
And you can't move forward, right? Like if you keep the fear, is too hard to like take that step forward.
100%. Yeah. Anyways, we're with you guys every step of the way. Like Yun-A said, as you continue to climb this mountain, you will realize that you don't have much to fear because we're all in this together and God is guiding you and with you every step, right?
Yes, I do.
Check out the MatchNet podcast at matchnet.us. Forgot to shout that out, but it's a step-by-step process for y'all to go through the matching process and blessing in the most systematic way possible. We have a lot of great content that's going to rock your world and change a lot of perspectives for you. All right. Cool.
Bye.
Bye.